All right, we had to go live for this very special episode, for this very special occasion, talking about a show that has lit up the airwaves in a way that I was not expecting at all, like since its initial inception back in 2019. But here, my friend Josh, I'm just going to call you that for now.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I can't think of any other good nicknames for here. We're going to talk about this finale because I've been watching this show for the last couple of weeks. I have so many thoughts on it that I had to podcast about it at some point. Josh, you have any thoughts about it before we get started?
Drake's an executive producer. He's doing a great job so far.
Buster's cry says it all. All that more
Yeah.
on tonight's episode of the Talking TV podcast. All right, we're here talking all things Euphoria, season 2 finale, entitled "All My Life, My Heart Has Yearned for a Thing I Cannot Name." That's the thing that this show is already guilty of: ridiculously pretentious show titles, episode titles. I'm like, come on, guy, we get it. Like you're already trying way too hard here. But I'm here with Josh. Josh is a newcomer to the channel, but him and me, we've talked about a lot of HBO stuff before, and I knew that he definitely knew his stuff as far as this goes. So, Josh, introduce yourself to the Talking TV audience.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh. I've been managing some of the Instagram for a time now. I like the post. I like Dom. I like talking TV. So let's do it.
Let's do it, indeed. Yeah. So, Josh, let's start way back at the beginning here. Let's start like what was the first instance you remember actually hearing about this show?
When it first came out, I heard that Zendaya was going to be in it. And I heard that Drake was going to be an executive producer. So that's all I needed to know. And I didn't watch it at first because I heard it sucked.
You're like, I'm sold immediately. It's like Zendaya and Drake. That's all I need to do. Yeah, I remember seeing this like back in 2019. It was like right when Game of Thrones ended and HBO put out their trailer of stuff that, you know, back in the day when they would like do all that. Well, I mean, they still do with the trailer show, like all the stuff they have coming out for the rest of the year. It's like, don't worry, please, like keep your HBO subscription. That was before Max was a thing. They're like, please keep your HBO subscription for the love of God. We have more stuff coming out. And it's like Euphoria premiere like right after Game of Thrones. It was like Euphoria, season 2 of Succession, Righteous Gemstones, His Dark Materials, Watchmen was coming out later that year. They were like, they had a lot of stuff. They definitely came to play in 2019. But it was weird because it was one of those shows that both like it was one of those. This happens a lot. You see with first time HBO shows where the first season comes out, it kind of like is really popular within like the first initial batch of people who watch it, but it takes a little bit of time for it to like necessarily like outreach to like the masses, for lack of a better word. You know, you see how that like Game of Thrones like took a little bit of time to catch on. I don't remember what exactly the trajectory was with The Sopranos, but every HBO show you've seen like with the last couple of years, it's like it always takes like roughly about like 2 or 3 seasons before you can finally like actually like it becomes friggin' huge and everyone is talking about it. And this show kind of benefited like a couple of other shows that kind of their entire like regular schedule was disrupted by the pandemic. Obviously, Succession, you saw a similar case with this where kind of the buildup and anticipation from the pandemic kind of propelled it to like an exorbitant amount of anticipation. Like the last couple of weeks before the season premiere, like everyone was posted on social media like all about it. And it definitely did the job because this has been like the most talked about show of like the last couple of weeks. It's kind of nuts when you think about it.
Yeah, Succession ended, and I feel like Euphoria just kind of took its lead and just kept sailing. HBO's been on a run.
Yeah, to say the least. But yeah, so we're gonna get into the plot of this episode. But first, I kind of just like want to talk about like what exactly the show is, because it's both problematic and not at the same time, in the sense of where like I get the appeal of the show, even if it's not necessarily my cup of tea. Like, first and foremost, like we got to talk about just like this whole thing that everyone talks about now, which is like, oh man, like do kids really do this? Like, can we just get that like out of the way as far as it goes? It's like, yes, we get it. Kids are gonna like do crazy stuff now, obviously in the social media age, just in general. But I think that I think that probably like the most notable thing about this show going in first and foremost is that Sam Levinson, who is the creator of the show, kind of doesn't really have any filters when it comes to like displaying like the way like he's really into, definitely I feel like, with like how like the sensibilities of kids now on social media just in general. And that's like something that's like really interesting as like a point of like reference there. Like, I don't know, like what's kind of your take on the whole like Sam Levinson of it all, as far as like how it is that like Do you think he's like accurately capturing like how kids act, even if it is like to kind of like this hyper exaggerated like extent?
I think Sam Levinson like spent a little bit too much time on Twitter and thinks he knows like the voice of all the kids in the world and what they're doing. Like he's tuned in, but in reality, he's like a little bit off. He's just like a little bit off. Like it's all right there, and then he has like a little bit of a twinge where it's like, hey, what does this guy really know what's going on here?
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
funny because I kind of saw this like with his I watched it. It was his it was like a first or second movie that he did, Assassination Nation, which came out a couple of years ago, which is another very similar situation where it's like, oh, this is how everybody on Twitter thinks. They're just completely exaggerated to the point where they're just gonna start rebellions that are gonna take over entire towns. And it's really strange because on the one hand, I'm like, okay, this is over exaggerated. This is kind of nonsensical. This is kind of like, you know, them playing into more soap opera elements. This is just like exaggeration for exaggeration's sake. But then on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, but I do know people who do talk like this. And that's what's kind of so unsettling is the fact that he kind of has hit this perfect meshing point between shit that's so like typical, like generic TV stuff that is so ridiculously unbelievable that you kind of can't look away, but with characters that seem just grounded enough where it's like, okay, I can like sort of buy into and believe that these are real people, and then just have them go off and do the absolute most ridiculous shit possible. Like, first of all, Nate Jacobs, like that kid is literally a supervillain.
He's
like
the best drunk driver ever.
Like,
he's going like 9 drinking a
how many
Budweiser
beers was he drinking? Like at least
every
in that
episode.
one shot. Like every episode. But no, I'm not talking about like every episode though. Like in each specific shot, like when you saw him drunk driving, he was crushing like 3 at a time.
Yeah.
Like 3 at a time. It was nuts.
He's
like
loading bullets as he's doing it too.
It's kind of wild. I'm like, wow, okay, this show should not be advocating for bringing of all the problematic elements about this show, it should not be advocating for bringing drunk driving back. Like that's problem number 1 that I have first and foremost. But
you look like Nick Jacobs. You can really
it's kind of it's definitely kind of one of those things where you can kind of get away with anything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, just look that attractive and you can literally get away with anything. But
if Ryan Gosling was doing it, it'd be cool, you know?
Yeah, true. But Ryan Gosling is also 40, so there's kind of like an air of like unbelievability there if we saw him like interacting with high schoolers. But hey, I don't know. So this season was definitely playing off a lot of threads that last season set up, or also a couple that kind of came out of nowhere. Like you obviously have the whole Fezco storyline that played directly off of Ashtray's, killing Mouse, which at the time was just like a kind of cool, badass, out of nowhere thing. You also had a couple new relationships that popped up. Obviously, as Twitter's most debated like new toxic couple. Okay, Cassie and Nate are a thing. We also had Lexi and Fezco start to like become a thing slightly, which sort of kind of was the inspiration for her play.
Lexi.
Her extremely Fexy, of course. Her extremely extravagant play that played out over the last couple of episodes where Sam Levinson is trying to do that thing that HBO loves to do, which is like that kind of intertextuality where it's like, okay, we're going to have like an artifice, a story within the story in order to kind of like provide the reflection on the main characters and allow them to achieve the growth that they need. It's done well sometimes. It's not done well sometimes. This one bordered on the pretentious, but like the first note that I have written down here just about this is that, God damn, Lexi's a fucking incredible director. Like, oh my God, why is she even in school at this point? Like, she should just drop out and do this shit full time.
Her co-director was in awe the entire time. Every time
like,
she was on the screen, she was like, she's so good. You have to respect Lexi.
It was kind of insane. I'm like, damn, I know college produced plays that look worse than this. Like, I get it. It's like, it's in California. They're playing with like an innumerable amount of resources just in general. But I'm like, good Lord, dude. Like that was impressive to say the least there. And so the one thing though that I did kind of think that was kind of shitty, and like just as far as it's like, okay, so Lexi was a character that really didn't have that much to do. We kind of saw that a lot this season. I know it earned a lot of flack just in the last couple of weeks alone, where it's like, a lot of the stars were going on to social media and going off, just being like, oh, he cut my character down. He didn't give me enough screen time, whatever. And it's like, he would like, the tactics of Sam Levinson behind the scenes, like we can get into that in a little bit if we want. Like like when you're dealing with this type of subject matter, there's gonna be problems behind the scenes to say the least. But like it was definitely clear that like, okay, he definitely wanted to take a step back with certain other characters. He wanted to focus heavily on other characters. The other thing too that this season kind of stepped away from was kind of the Skins-esque approach that they took with season 1, where season 1 had like the cold open that kind of focused on each of the different characters as it went on. I thought that was kind of a neat little trick. It was a cool little narrative device. Like I'm always a fan of when shows are able to pull that off. And this season, they kind of pulled the rug out. They did it for like what, like 2 episodes, maybe. They did they did it with Cal, and they did it with Fezco and his grandma, and that was really it. And that was really it. Like every other one, it's kind of like, okay, we're just kind of like continuing with the plot. So that was like kind of an interesting change that took off. Also, the fact that Levinson wrote and directed every episode of this season, as opposed to last season where he wrote all the episodes, but he directed only about like half of them, I want to say, I think. But so that was definitely like a marked change as well, like kind of showing like where it's like, okay, like, you know, this one person has creative control over everything here. But I wanted to kind of start this off here. Like, what do you think like Lexi's thought process was in like in creating the play, and like what do you think like was she justified? Because like I had it written down here where it's like I think that Cassie's kind of sort of justified in that sense, where it's like, look, I get it, I get where she's coming from, but it's like you are kind of putting everyone's life just on blast here in general, and it's kind of not at all subtle about what's like look. It's high school in the 21st century social age. Everybody knows what everyone's doing. Everybody knows who's fucking who. Everybody knows who's the drug. Everybody knows that. You know, they're like, there's no qualms here. So the fact that she actually thought she could get away with like some level of ornaments, I thought was kind of a little bit like to the point of unbelievability. But I don't know. Like, what's your whole take on that?
Cassie was literally the only person that was angry other than Nate. So does that really make her justified? You know,
dude, I guess
whose dad's funeral was up for. She kind of took it pretty well.
That's true. Yeah, like everyone else was kind of like getting along with the play, like pretty well. Just in
Did
general.
You like the Cassie scene where she walked up?
I don't know, man. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, this feels like it has to happen. You know, it's like I get it. Just you know, it's gonna be soap operatic. It's gonna be ridiculous. It's gonna be over the top. It's gonna be hyper stylized. But like, I guess just the fact that like she was bringing up legitimate points to me, where it's like, okay, I get it. Like everyone else is kind of like having fun because like everyone like watches each other's like social, like their own like interpersonal drama bullshit just as like a fucking show. And like I was kind of, not gonna lie, I was kind of cheering during that scene too. I'm like, oh man, this just keeps getting better and better. Like I was like watching the people watching the show. I'm like, this is achieving whole new levels of meta storytelling right here. But
Fezco too, when he was talking about the whole social media thing.
Right. Yeah. Like they. And that's what frustrates me so much, because Sam Levinson knows what he's doing. Like he's not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. Like he definitely like has these points that do connect to each other, and like he is trying to get across a theme in each episode. You know, it's just I think that where he focuses a little bit too much on theme, I think that the actual action of what's happening, that's where we get into like the more soap opera elements, and that's where we get into the more like kind of ridiculous elements, because like the dialogue is really hit or miss for me. Like that's the part where it's like, okay, like on certain lines, I'm like, okay, I get it. Other lines, it's like, bro, that's a TV thing. That's not at all like a realistic thing. The episode itself, I thought was good. I thought it functioned well as a finale, like as far as like kind of playing into whatever the overall story of this entire show is going to be. I think it did very, very well there. Like the way that it kind of was the opposite ending of the last one, where the last one kind of, you know, you see Rue downward spiral, and then in this episode, you kind of see her like a little bit uplifted a little bit, where she's finally able to like, even if she's not like completely healed, she's able to like find a place for healing of where she come from. And I thought that even though I'm still not the biggest fan of Zendaya's performance and her as a personality, I definitely think that the writing around Rue and kind of the arc that she had this season, I definitely was like a much bigger fan of. Whereas last season, it kind of felt like she was just moping around and drifting, which I get. That's part of the whole like, it again, like I'll get into that, but it's part of the whole like my problem that I have with portrayal of addicts and how things tend to slide into a little bit of glamorization territory. And considering the fact that this entire freaking show is like the most overshot, like the production value and the actual craft and look of the show is amazing. Like first and foremost, like I gotta give props to those guys there in general, like the camera team, the lighting, the way it's shot. Like he kind of gets a little bit overly ambitious with the circle rotating shots, but it looks fantastic. I will say that. Like it's definitely probably like the most well shot show I've seen like in a minute.
Yeah, especially the high school scenes. I really like the high school scenes. Like when all the girls are always in the bathroom, like that just looks like a woman's bathroom. It looks like a girl's high school bathroom. It's well shot.
Yeah, to say the least. Like, and the other thing too also is but this kind of plays into like a slight problem that I have, is where it's almost because this is the thing that I see a lot when it's like I try to say it's like, no, that's kind of bullshit, and everyone else is like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about, which is that it's almost like too well shot for its own good, if that makes any sense. You know, like the fact that it is like so glammed up, and like I'm sure that like a lot of that is obviously, you know, real life, but it feels almost like too glammed up for it. Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like hyper stylized in the sense, and that's like kind of what takes me. You know what it reminds me of? Sam Levinson kind of reminds me a lot of like Baz Luhrmann, who is a guy that like you either love him or hate him because he has got some really over stylized, like fucking absolutely nutty shit that goes on. But his stuff is all nonsense, you know. It's pretty to look at, and it's really appealing, and you kind of can't look away when you're watching it. But like, I'm sorry, what is there of substance in Moulin Rouge? What is there of substance? Like the only reason why The Great Gatsby even skates by is because it's based off the novel, which is like really amazing. But like that movie is absolute fluff nonsense. Like the Elvis movie that he's got coming out, I can't even make heads or tails of that trail. That shit was nuts. We actually have a comment from Lil Fettuccini 69. What is your favorite episode of the series so far? I got a couple that I can choose from because like I do like a few episodes of the seeds of like the entire show. For me, episode 5 of this season was definitely the most intense. Like I definitely feel like as far as like just exposing the characters like at their absolute rawest, I definitely think that one really accomplished it. Also, I've been a fan of these last 2 episodes, like just as far as like the way that it's shot with the play, just in general. I thought that was really well done as well. Josh, what's your favorite episodes of the show so far?
Honestly, I think this was my favorite episode. They had like good moments. Some episodes have like moments where it's like, this is like the best TV I've seen all year, and you have to keep watching. And then they have moments where it's like, oh, get this off my screen. This was like the most well-paced. They had moments for each character. It kind of tied up everything. I'm more partial to season closers because like that's where I like getting the not tied. But this one, this is probably my favorite.
That's where all the marbles come out. That's where like they usually like throw out the biggest stuff. It's like you got to give it something to like wrap up the season. You got to give us a crazy climax to leave off on, and you gotta keep us tied over for the next season. Something that I thought the Game of Thrones did really well. But like real quick, what are some of the moments where you're like, oh my god, get this off my screen? Because I can think of a few, but.
Oh, I got to think of one. When Rue was running around in the traffic, I was like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, I was really like, what are we doing here?
That was nuts. I'm like, what is happening here? Yeah. And like, that's the same episode too, where she's like, again, like just constantly like held over in pain, like where she's just on like whatever is like the in between of like where like addicts have peaked, and she's like just trying to run from place to place to place. Also, I loved it. They had her go to like the crazy like former high schooler teacher turned drug dealer's house. And they were definitely like trying to keep her like imprisoned there, and then she just escapes, and then that plot line is just dropped and never brought up again. And it's like,
oh my god,
I feel like that would be a pretty big thing to bring up. It's like she kind of like got what was it like? How much money worth of a suitcase of drugs from that woman? Kind of dropped the ball, got it stolen, and then she's like, oh okay, you know, and it just never brought up again.
Yeah, kind of like the Fezco and Mouse thing. It's like a storyline that you're gonna think it's like, oh, it got dropped, and then it's gonna come back next season, like, oh my god, what is Rue gonna do?
Exactly, especially since, you know, with just how it ended with the whole Fezco thing, how that went down. It definitely seems like that's gonna, I don't know, man, without spoiling anything yet, because I know there are a few people who are still catching up on it, but I don't want to save it for the big moment, the big reveal. But like, you positive about Fezco's future here? Like, what are we saying? Like, he would, like, a lot of people were worried. They were like, oh no, is Fezco gonna die? He didn't die, thank God. We did lose a certain character, but
he's gonna be back. You know, he's gonna be back in some way, somehow. He's too popular at this point. The Lexi thing has to continue. It's not, they're not going to drop it after one season after it's hitting its peak. So he's going to be back.
Yeah, definitely. Like they definitely left it off in a position where it's like, okay, this could definitely get like really interesting if like all of like Lesco or Fexi or whatever they called it, whatever Twitter called it. I don't know. I wasn't really in the know and I wasn't really keeping track of it, but I definitely is going to make it certainly interesting if you see what's it called, like their next meeting together is like through a plate glass window. I don't know that. Could you imagine like a conjugal visit between them two? Like, oh my god, that would be nuts. That would be absolutely nuts. I mean, I know they're both of age in real life, but I'm like, damn, I don't even know how that would work with like conjugal visits between teens. That would get into some crazy territory that I would not be expecting. Little Fettuccini 69 again. Thanks for tuning in, dude. What actor or actress would you like to see in season 3? Are we talking like actors that are already there or like newcomers? You know, because like I know you're not a fan of if they bring in Tom Holland, which that would just be distracting. That would like there's stunt casting and then there's that would just be distracting. Plus, I'm pretty sure he's too expensive for HBO as well. Like I don't think they would be able to afford him, and I don't think he's at the point where he's like, oh yeah, I'm generous enough to appear on an HBO on like a critically acclaimed TV show for like a lower price. Yeah, but this is a discount. But Yeah. What do you think of the whole Elliot wrap up and that whole thing? You know, because I was definitely a little bit of where it's like, I was definitely like a little bit like confused by that whole thing where it's like, yeah, I get it. Rue's whole thing is all like, oh, forgiveness. I'm gonna forgive the guy, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like we didn't get enough of Elliot just to like really like form a stance on him. Like he was definitely like, it was definitely like an introduction character. They kind of gave him like a few, like a kind of a sort of quintessential role, but we really didn't get to know a whole lot about him. So like, I don't know, like you okay with where they left off the Elliot things? I'm not sure how I feel about that.
All season I was waiting for him, Dominic Fike, to sing a song, and finally he sang a song.
He
So
sang
I
a
feel like
song.
he had his
Sang a song.
moment. He just had his moment. I think he's gonna be back in season 3 too. And now that him and Rue are more friends, but Jules is still kind of on the outside, I think he has a bigger role to play, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So wait, like, do you follow that guy? So like, is that guy like a singer like in real life? Is
Dominic
that the
Fike,
whole thing?
yeah. Yeah, he has a couple albums.
Yeah. Okay, well, I wasn't sure. Like I said, I've never heard of him before this,
Yeah.
but you know, it's crazy too because it's like if you take one of those quiz where it's like you keep track of like the actors' ages in like real life,
How old is Dominic Fike?
bro, that blew me away. I thought he was like roughly in the same ballpark as like Zendaya and Hunter Schafer because they're all between like 96 and like 98 or something like that, roughly. Fike is fucking 27. He's born in 95. Crazy, right?
Okay, well, don't start with ages. Alexa Demi's like 31.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, that's the most deceiving thing. Yeah, it's the fact that I love how she's hanging out with Minka Kelly, Lila Garrity from Friday Night Lights, and they're pretending like, oh, like you're so young. I'm like, bitch, you're not even a full 10 years apart.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're only 41 and she's 30. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, and she's like 31. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I know what's going on.
You never would have known.
You never know. Yeah, that was. I mean, first of all, like, can we talk about the fact that they just brought in Minka Kelly just out of nowhere? Like, it's just like this random mom that Alexa Demi's babysitting for. Like, what? I mean, I don't know. You see, like, were you a Friday Night Lights guy?
That entire plotline was weird.
Yeah, really strange. And then the whole thing at the end is it's like, oh, it's like, oh, it's okay for your best friend to screw your ex behind your back. That's kind of like what the whole consensus of that storyline was. I'm like, what? Okay.
That was her character arc, yeah.
That was her entire character arc. Yeah, no, but yeah, the Alexa Demi, the Maddie character has always been like very interesting to me because it's constantly a character that I feel like is battling against like it's very clearly like supposed to be like rooted in a very generic character, and they're constantly like trying to make her more than that. But because Demi is too good with that type of portrayal, I feel like she can just never escape from that shadow. You know, it's like where it's like you're supposed to feel like sympathetic for her, but it's like I'm sorry, I can't, I just can't. You know.
I mean, she's doing it well. She doesn't have to escape. Just keep doing what she's doing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But hey, look, she's never gonna get past. For me, she's never gonna rise above like the whole mid '90s moment that she had with Sunny Soldier. But yeah, Little Fettuccine 69 says newcomers. I don't know. What other young up and coming actors like are there that like we actually know about? Because I feel like all of the ones that I knew of are like too famous now, are all like almost 30, so they don't exactly qualify for it.
I mean, they don't have to be young. I feel like we just established that, so it could be anyone really.
Yeah.
It's got to look young.
As long as they were born between like 95 or onward, they're good. Except with Alexa Demi being like the sole exception to that. But I don't know. Storm Reid right now is the only age accurate character in that show because she's 18, but she's playing like 15 or 16. So I'm like, all right, that kind of works. You know, like they always age them up a bit. But like the fact that it's like, bro, Zendaya's 25. And like I get it, she still looks like I'm like okay, so Sam Levinson like still kind of like makes her look like 17, like that's impressive, but it's like I don't know, like it's always interesting to me like whatever how they can like make like these Hollywood actors like look as young as they do for like the long periods of time, and it's like the point, but it makes it so much worse because then when the age actually starts to show, you're like, oh my god, what happened? It's like a complete overnight reaction. Like, bro, did you see like the recent pictures of Tom Cruise like not in Mission Impossible get up? It's like, bro, that motherfucker's gonna be 60 this year. Like he's finally starting to look his age, you know?
Is he graying?
He's graying a little. And no, he's showing the weight. He's showing the wrinkles. He's got a little bit more chin fat. It's not looking good for him. It's not.
He can come at all. He doesn't have to be in high school. I could see Tom Cruise.
Bro, Tom Cruise showing up in Euphoria? That would be crazy. That would actually be crazy.
But seriously, maybe like Nat Wolff. Like
Nat Wolff would be good. Nat or Alex Wolff, I can totally see on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And like they had like hit right in that age range too. They're my age, so that would Nat actually might be a little bit too old, but Alex I could definitely see in this show, 100%. Code 02K says, is Rue talking about Lexi's dad or Fez when she was saying he wakes up and tries to be better for you, but not anyone else, etc.? Because it could apply to both, but Lexi's dad is very out of her life. I have a feeling that's probably what they're doing. They're trying to make it like the subject of the person is Lexi's dad, but they're trying to like connect it to Fezco in the sense of where it's like, oh, because they're probably going to, again, do some, like, edible complex where it's like, oh, Fezco reminds Lexi of her dad, and so that's why, like, she's into it. I mean, look, the Animus complex is a thing. Like, let's not shy around it. We all know how that works, you know? Lil Fettuccine, who was the worst character in the whole series? Nate, because he's a fucking psychopath.
Okay, like behavior wise or like written wise, who's written the worst? Because I'd say Cat.
Oh, for sure. But we
Yeah.
all know the behind the scenes. Yeah, Cat definitely had like kind of no development after like.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think Cat even really had that compelling of an arc in the first season to begin with?
No, they had like once again moments of her. Like the whole sex worker arc was kind of it worked for her, like it was empowering to women, but that kind of dropped it. They had her dancing on stage for a little bit, which is kind of weird, but they just dropped it, you know?
Yeah. It's just like he wanted to like could just completely drop Cat from the main plot, just make her like a background character that's like only like so it's like kind of like the intermediary between the whole Cassie and Maddie thing that's going on. But I definitely think that like a friend of ours who said this off screen, which I thought was one of the funniest things. She's like, yeah, the most accurate thing about the show is Cat writing One Direction fan fiction, and I'm like, that's pretty good. Oh man, that was pretty good. Yeah, Lil Fettuccine also asked, how many seasons will there be until the actual series ends? My whole thing is probably until the actors don't. I can definitely see this being a thing of where it's. You know what? Actually, I don't know. Do you think that this could be like an actors-based show where it's like when the actors don't want to do it anymore, they'll stop? Or do you think this is a thing of where it's like, nah, Sam Levinson is going to do this until like the show's over, you know, and like the show's hit its definitive
show has
peak?
more of like a mission. Like I don't think it's gonna be like a long-winded thing. It's not gonna be 6 seasons. It's not gonna be 6 seasons. No. How are you gonna have 6 seasons in Euphoria?
Exactly. How do you drag this shit out for like 6 seasons? Like if we're comparing this to at least the show that the first season was clearly trying to emulate. I know this show is technically a remake of an Israeli show, but like we all know, like it's pulling. Look with the cold opens about the characters at the beginning of each episode, it's so obviously trying to emulate Skins that first season, you know. But now that we're kind of ended like the 2 season peak, like the genius thing about Skins is that they traded up casts every season, so it's like you always hit the kids like right in their like junior/senior years of high school. So it's like right as they were leaving, you had like the next batch to come in to replace it, so you could kind of keep the trajectory of the show. And because they had like no connectivity really between the generations, you can kind of like essentially like reset every single time. But it's like these guys are like all like what, like sophomores, juniors in high school.
I never know what grade they're in. It's not really
like I mean with the amount of like actual like classwork that we see in these schools, like we all know high school is just a backdrop. Like these kids are not in high school. They're not actually in high school. We know that. That is literally just a blank foray into as an excuse in order to like keep them all together. But like I don't know, like foreseeably, like just as far like, do you see them like ever leaving high school? Do you see them like pursuing it as like, oh, they have to deal with these issues in a whole new way once they hit college? Like, what exactly is the longevity of the show? Because that's something that I'm even a little bit confused at.
I don't think this show's going to college. You know, like maybe they can start incorporating new younger characters, and we could like maybe shift maybe like Rue's sister. But I don't see them going to college. Like Rue's getting into college. I've never seen her do work, and she does a lot of drugs. So,
bro, I've never seen a single character in this entire show do work. I've never seen a single character like
Lexi
pick
does,
up a
Lexi
pencil.
does.
Yeah, true, but like, how much screen time did you actually get in the first season? Like, they kept that on the DL for a reason. And honestly, I'm sorry, the only work that I saw her doing this entire season, besides like calling Cassie out on all of her bullshit, was just writing the play. That's literally all, writing the play and then hanging out with Fezco and like watching like old movies with Fezco. That was literally all that I saw her do like this entire season. But I don't think I've ever seen a single character like actually do a bit of schoolwork outside of like just the generic like insert classroom shot here so that we could like use this in order to pass the time while Rue gives another like monologue about how meaningless life is and everything. But a couple more points that I wanted to hit before we actually got on. What's it called? Nate's next Dr. Evil scheme works like a charm, because that's literally what I'm calling this shit now. He's pulled it off what, like 3 times now? Like first with the Jules blackmail. Yeah, first with the Jules blackmail thing, then with the whole engineering, the whole like thing against him, said it would be name drop, where he blackmailed the dude who Maddie slept with in the first episode into taking credit for strangling her at the carnival, and then he got Jules to corroborate the story, and that whole thing was ridiculous enough. I'm like, okay, they can't possibly top this. They can't possibly top this. Then he gets into the whole thing with Cal this season, where for a hot second, I thought they were trying to redeem Cal. I was about to be like, no, hold up. Hold the fucking phone. I'm like, Hollywood has got to stop with this trying to making us empathize with pedophiles here, because it's popping up in a little bit too much things now. And I'm starting to feel real. I mean, it's never okay to begin with, but like, they're usually at least subtle about it, but this was getting a little bit too close to home. And I'm like, okay, pause. Do not make me start feeling some sympathy for Cal Jacobs, who might be the most problematic HBO character ever conceived of. And this is the same network that gave us Joffrey Baratheon and Ramsay Bolton in one show. That was already too much for me to begin with. But then they end it with the whole, okay, so he left the house, and we didn't see him for like a long time. Like, we didn't see him like for the entirety of the second half of the show. And you see Nate going up on him with a gun, and we're like, and you saw the shot last moment where it's like him on top of them, and we're like, oh shit, was Cal and Nate's relationship like way darker than we originally thought? And we see him walk in with the gun, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna kill him. Okay. And then it turns out, nope, he's got another cockamamie plot. I'm like, Nate should be a friggin' CSI guy. Like, oh, that's the thing too. That's like consistently baffles me about the show. Why are any of these guys in high school? Like, Lexi's a freaking like Tony nominee play director. Nate is like a professional like embezzler. Like, I don't know why he doesn't drop out and just run his own embezzling business right there, what's it called? Like, progressively I feel like we're gonna find out more. Like, Maddie, I'm sure like could like just literally do something as far as like anything, like as far as just like makeup tutorials go. She could probably just like do makeup tutorials and like completely be an Instagram influencer. So I'm just like, why do you even need the facade of high school here to begin with? Literally everyone here is kind of just like got their own side hustles that are already like, exactly. I'm like, so that's already kind of ridiculous in and of itself. But I don't know, man. Like, so like the whole getting Cal arrested thing, like what exactly is the feasibility of that? Like, is that the least believable thing? Is that the most believable thing? Or are we just like conditioned to like Nate's ridiculous concoction of plans that we just kind of take this shit for granted? Like, I don't know what to make of that.
Do you think that's the last time we see Cal?
Oh, no shot. Okay. No shot. Like, only because normally I would think so, but I think the problem is that Eric Dane Cal is, and I've seen this, and I fucking hate when this shit happens. Cal has become too much of a fan favorite character. And I didn't know how that was possible, like, at all. But I think that because Cal's become too much of a fan favorite character, and because people like the whole friction between him and Nate as far as, like, being, like, the consistent origin for Nate's, like, psychopathy, because I'm just gonna call it that, like, and now, like, and that also kind of feeds into the whole thing that you saw with Cassie and Lexi, which, by the way, the fact that we didn't see the full actual cat fight, and the fact that we actually, like, got the fight on stage in the middle of everything, and they were just kind of going along with it. They were just kind of being like, yeah, okay, let's go. And I was just like, this just keeps getting better and better as far as just amping up the ridiculousness. They're just going for it. But they, like, kind of when they're sitting in the bathroom after the fact, and they're kind of like nursing their wounds, and like, you're not sure if they're going to make up or not. And they sort of kind of do for like a hot second. And then but then you see Maddie gets the last laugh where she's like, now it's your turn, where she's like, well, now it's your turn. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So it's like her kind of like that. I thought like that was actually like kind of a good catharsis there, where it's like, okay, I get where she's coming from. She's finally like, she understands like kind of that she's like finally free of Nate for whatever, know, and now like Cassie's going to be the one that's going to have to deal with that. And
maybe it's because he held a gun to her head for like,
yeah,
that
how many people in this show has Nate held a gun to? Because they like, I feel like he's got to have some kind of record for like most amount of people that he's like threatened at gunpoint that are like, but with the same gun before the age of like 18. Like, that's got to be some kind of record right there.
How old is that actor? He's got to be super
He's
old.
My age. He's another one. He's my age. He's 25.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah. Elordi is 25. Hunter Schafer's 23. Alexa Demi, we know, is 31. Sydney Sweeney's my age. She's 25. Maud Apatow's my age. She's 25. Zendaya's a year older. She's going to be 26. Don't ask me why I know all these guys' ages. Angus Cloud is 23. I'm weird with actors and their ages. It's the whole non-aging thing that consistently throws me off. Little fella, will they ever explain Cal's third son in the series? Cal has a third son? What?
I didn't know he had a third son.
I missed that. I
saw a conspircy somewhere that like it was a picture in the house that had another kid in it.
That had the third kid. Maybe like he died or something like that. Okay, I must have missed that. Then I just love how like Nate's got a brother and like he's never mentioned or like brought up except for like occasional things, and then he just comes out of the woodwork like in that one scene when he's like admitting that he's like, yeah, I'm gay and you guys don't accept me for that, so I'm gonna leave. And the son comes out and he's just like, what the fuck is going on? I just thought that just killed me. Where I'm like, you've got Cal and Nate Jacobs, who are consistently competing for like who can be the bigger scumbag in their relative house. And you got this third guy who just comes out of nowhere and is like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm not really a character, but I don't even think he has a name. Like, what is that guy's name? Like Twitter.
I don't know.
Like, somebody tell me in the comment section if possible, what is Nate Jacobs' brother's name? Because I'm actually interested in that. I feel bad for Fezco. He's gonna lose his grandma, and now Lexi. Not sure yet on Lexi, And his grandma, last I checked, was breathing. But I mean, I guess this is the point where we got to bring it up. Pour one out. R.I.P. Ashtray. It was definitely like, yeah, he definitely, again, it was one of those instances where you saw his action at the beginning. You know, he stabbed the one guy who was trying to rat on them in the neck.
Buster.
And I was like, I'm like, this is Ash's second decision that's going to come back to bite him in the ass. And it did just a lot quicker than I thought it was going to, where he locks himself in that bathroom with every gun possible. He's like, and he just goes loud in a blaze of glory. I'm like, is it too much that the Scarface poster was hanging like right there in the background? Like, it's like, okay, the movie homages were already kind of killing me to begin with in the first season. They kind of pulled back a little bit with the second season, but that moment right there, I'm like, okay, that was a little bit much. Like, I don't know, man. Like, Ashtray was one of those characters. I feel like he's gone too soon, but it was definitely a situation of where, like, okay, that kid's 15 in real life, so they're like, look, if we're gonna supposedly continue to believe the fact that he's like only supposed to be like 10 or 11 years old, that like, you know, they're like, we got to get him out of here. There's no way that we can say, if they're like, because we're like, yeah, we're screwed when that kid hits his growth spurt.
That kid's like a professional boxer or something. So I think he was like to play this role. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. That kid's nuts. Like, that kid's like actually like a real, like a gangster, like in real life.
And everything.
Yeah.
But when the entire scene was like amazing. First off, that scene was amazing. And it lasted, all those bullets were fired, and Ashtray only killed one cop, which was like the most dramatic part of the entire scene.
Right. Like how, like he shot Fezco before he shot he shot the SWAT guy. I'm like, bro,
everybody had before he shot any.
Great idea for a plan. Like great concept, great setup. Hide in the bathroom. You know, use the closed doors as defense. Yeah. Terrible aim though. Like terrible aim. Like, dude. Like great idea for a plan. Terrible execution right there. But like the way that was shot, like how they kept it off screen, was like, okay, so Sam Levinson, he's gonna go just as far as like, okay, not showing it. But like I'll admit, like a lot of people were expecting Elliot to go. For a hot second, I thought Cal was gonna die. And then when they did Ashtray, I'm like, damn, that's crazy. Especially with how they kicked off the season too, with the flashback with the grandma too. Which, by the way, Charmaine Bucco from The Sopranos coming in, blowing shit up and owning the scene for like the opening scene of season 2. I remember we were watching that like a couple weeks ago, like when the series first premiered, and I was like, wait a minute, is that Charmaine from The Sopranos? And she's just coming in like cursing out, like being like a professional gangster, beating up guys with crowbars, like fucking traded like 8 or 9-year-old Fezco to be a gangster. Like, I'm like, this shit is too much, man. I'm like, that was the moment where I'm like, okay, I kind of have to watch this show, even though I'm still not convinced that this is a good show at all. But so kind of the overall takeaways, R.I.P. Ash. Maddie gets the last laugh because Cassie at the end of the day is now Nate's kind of new prey. Or like kind of subject of his wrath going forward, and is going to be his latest abuse victim. I will say it kind of does suck that we didn't get any closure on the Lexi Fezco thing, but they're obviously going to hold that for next season because they obviously wanted to focus on kind of Rue and her recovery just in general. Where do you think we leave off though with the Rue Jules thing? Like, where do you think that goes as far as the future goes? Like, do you think there's redemption? Do you think it's one of those where it's like, oh, you know, we were kind of like super like high on each other's own supply when we first met, and now it's like I'm kind of a little bit pulled back now, you know? Like, where do you think that's gonna go?
I think that's exactly that. They had that scene when Rue was like talking. She was giving like another monologue, and she was like, she always remembered Jules as her first love. I think it's more like that. Like they were hot and heavy, and then things peaked, and it's never going to be the same. It's just never going to be the same. They're never going to be romantic again, I don't think, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where I'm like, it's not quite as toxic as some of the other relationships that they were for, but it was definitely a thing of where it's like they were kind of like in like that heavy moment of lust, and then when they like actually like had to revert back to being human beings, they realized, oh, we don't actually like have a lot in common. I don't know. I feel like Jules definitely got shortchanged by the finale, only because obviously, you know, it's Lexi's whole thing of like, it's her entire like story of her and Rue and all the people that she knew, and they only knew Jules for a short amount of time. So I get it, but it definitely feels like Jules's role just in general. I'm actually kind of surprised that we didn't hear more, because it definitely felt like Jules kind of got a little bit like, she had slightly more screen time, but kind of got a little bit catty, where she's kind of like uses like this plot device in order to like manipulate things of going in a certain way, where you don't get as much stuff behind the scenes with her and Nate, with her like Nate fantasies. You only see that like temporarily. You have Nate give her the drive, and then you have her be like, you know, start like, you know, the love triangle with her, Rue, and Elliot, but they kind of don't really do anything as far as that goes, you know, like definitely like kind of a lack of Jules, which Jules, I'll say to begin with, was kind of like I'm not gonna say she was a problematic character, but she was definitely a character that I felt like had the least to offer, if that makes any sense. Even though she had like a killer origin story, just as far as that goes, and as far as like her introduction to the scene, woof. But like, I don't know, like, what do you think Jules' actual like mileage on this show is to begin with?
I mean, they gave her that like own character episode in between the seasons, and that was cool. But it feels like ever since they did that, it's been kind of like downplayed. Like we don't really get much of her and her father's relationship anymore. Like everything is like outside of Jules's life when it's happening to Jules, if that makes sense. Like it's things happening to other people, and she's just kind of around, or like you said, she's influencing them. But we never really get like what's going on with her.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it definitely feels like the moment where she sleeps with Elliot, that even though like the focus is on her, that feels more of like an Elliot decision
Yeah.
than a her decision, where it's like, okay, Rue's clearly the one that has the agency in there. Like, she's intentionally making the decision to fuck over her best friend and former lover, who may or may also not have a crush on this kid. And this kid is completely new to the dynamics and has no idea where everything is going. And this kid just fucking rats on Rue and is like, oh yeah, Rue's doing drugs again with me. And then that kind of prompts the whole, Rue's downward spiral that we see continue into like as like be the focus of the second half of the season. But I don't know, like, I just feel like you're right. Like, ever since they did like the specials that they did like in 2020, when all the creators behind the scenes were just like, yeah, we're bored with COVID. You want to just like hang out in like COVID safe settings and just like shoot these one-off like essentially like one act plays. And I will say that, like, first of all, which of those did you prefer, the Rue episode or the Jules episode?
The Rue episode.
The Rue episode. Yeah, I was definitely more so on that fence too, because I mean, silent MVP of the show is Coleman Domingo's performance as Ali, because like I've always loved that guy. And Coleman Domingo's been having like a weird last couple of years where at first they were trying to typecast him in like some generic parts. Then he was like trying to expand outside of role. Like he had two extremely strange villainous turns in movies that came out in 2021 between both Zola and the Candyman remake. But and like he's worked with Sam Levinson before on Assassination Nation, but definitely I feel like he's found his groove there, and like he's found like kind of his muse. And like the Ali part to me is definitely like kind of, for me, not only the most interesting and compelling character, but also like kind of the only source of hope in this like really bleak and kind of really muddled, like just awful world that we're kind of stuck in. So that for me was like kind of why I love the Rue solo episode more than the Jules one. But the Jules one definitely did offer like a lot, kind of like a lot of perspective that I felt like was missing, that we kind of only had hints at in the first season. But I definitely feel like they kind of pulled back on her a little bit and kind of only relegated her as a plot device. And it just makes me wonder. Same thing with the Cat situation, where it's like these are both characters that I think still had like a decent amount of mileage to go. Cat less so than Jules, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like that. Like Jules is going to be a character that sticks around for a decent amount of time. I want to do season MVPs before we get out of here. Like, for me, easily the MVP of this whole season, Lexi. She just completely won the entire season. I love Maud Apatow. I think she's really been improving as an actress. I mean, she's been in her dad Judd stuff since she was a little kid, but like she's really been coming into her own these last couple of years as an actress. I really enjoyed her as Pete Davidson's sister in King of Staten Island. And like, she's really impressed me because she's probably the only actress that like toes the line between like helping to embellish Sam Levinson's ridiculous source material with like an ounce of levity while still like maintaining like the grounded nature. Like, she's the only character, her and Fezco, like I think the reason why people gravitate towards them so much is because they're the only characters that actually feel like real legit characters, if that makes any sense,
Well, she feels like a real person, like an actual high school student that has feelings and can empathize with other people, even though she's just a bystander, which is an amazing point.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. And like, hey, it shows because she literally took all of her experiences and made this like gargantuan play that was kind of nuts. Like I said, I'm like, why is she in high school? She needs to be directing shit at like Juilliard or something like that. Like, that was nuts how she completely pulled that off. Little Fettuccine 69. He's apparently the Euphoria expert here. The brother's name was Aaron, apparently.
Okay,
yeah. And a couple more questions. What character do you think will get more development in the next season? Interesting. Well, first off, I definitely want Elliot to get more focus, because I definitely think that like the character's interesting, and I think Dominic Fike does a great job with that, and I want to see him get more development. Also, I'm not saying that we need to like focus entirely on Cat, but like give us a little bit more.
I need something about Cat. That
just
one
a little something
was a little bit too vague for me to even know what's going on with her anymore.
Yeah, and then we kind of like just bounce automatically from her and Ethan, like they're kind of sort of broken up, right to Ethan now helping Lexi with the play, and there feels like there was something missing there. And as far as the jump to, also I will say that I am infinitely more interested in following Maddie now that she seems to have finally put Nate behind her. You know, I'm not saying that like her feud with Cassie is definitely going away, but I definitely feel like this season kind of showing like, oh, she actually can be like a character of her own outside of like Nate's abuse. I thought that that was actually kind of interesting and could be worth watching going forward. Another, obviously, Ali, because he steals absolutely every single scene that he's in. But the other thing, there was one, obviously Fezco, because he's just the best, and you know, he is just in for a world of hurt going forward. I can just tell. Like I have a bad feeling. Yeah, they're gonna do some gnarly shit with him. Just now, they'll find a way to break him out. Are you kidding me? This is Euphoria. They're gonna find a way to break him out. Lexi's gonna. Are you kidding me? Knowing them, Lexi's gonna like somehow like magically become a lawyer and somehow get him out of jail. Like I would not put it past the show as far as coming up with something absolutely ridiculous like that. And then there was one other. Rue. I'm not gonna lie though. I don't see where they go with Rue, because you know what? I have a bad feeling that Rue is gonna be the Kendall of this show. Like if we're comparing it more to Succession, in that every other season is gonna be like an up and down. Whereas season 1, downward spiral. Season 1, okay, her recovery. Now season 3, you're gonna have the traditional. Oh, I'm trying to stay sober and I'm really, really serious about it, but the temptation is just gonna come. And Rue, to me, it sucks because obviously she's the main character and everyone watches it because of her and they love Zendaya, but she's the most predictable character to me on the entire show. Like every single thing that she does, I completely can tell that it's gonna happen from like 15 steps away, you know, mostly just because it's like that type of stuff has been done so much that there's very little actual like nuance and new stuff that you could really add to it. You know, I hope we get more stuff from Jules. Cal Jacobs can just go away as far as I'm concerned. That is a character that I never really want to see on screen again. The fact that we got this much sympathy with him this time around, I want him to go away. Badly enough, and maybe call this like the show like getting me under a toxic lens, but I'm kind of like fascinated by Nate for the sole reason other than I just want to see him constantly one up his ridiculous cockamamie like entrapment plans of people, like getting them sent to jail. I just want to see like how many other characters he can pull that off with, because he's kind of literally an evil genius now, and that alone is the sole reason why I'm interested in watching him.
I want more Nate and his mom. Him and his mom had a good dynamic on the screen when they were together. It was like kind of like intimate, but also he was just jabbing at her. I like that part.
Yeah, really weird and really messed up and really twisted. Like I'm interested in seeing kind of where that goes. One character though that I was not going to necessarily say was my favorite character, but one who definitely, let's say, alerted me in the first season, that this season just completely lost me with Cassie. Like, I'm sorry, Cassie, for the love of Christ, talk about a character that every single decision that she made this season was just the wrong one. And like Sydney Sweeney is continuing to blow me away. Like I really do think that like of all the actors on the show, she really does have like the best shot as far as like making it really big. She just needs that one role with like the right director that like people with like the right director that'll actually give her something to do. Like she's already a big enough like name on social media and Instagram in general. Like she like obviously like Entertainment Weekly obviously going nuts releasing like that whole story about her and everything about how healthy she is in real life. She's definitely like making the rounds, and it's like she's on her way to becoming like the next big thing as far as like the next like breakout superstar from the show. Like she's already been in White Lotus. She's got a couple more things on the docket coming up that like she's got big coming out. But Cassie, I'm like, this entire season she was just a character that I was just like, what are you doing? Just every single decision, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I could do less of Cassie. She did the Safdie Brothers movie though. I could see that kind of working.
What was that? You cut out there for a second.
I said I could see in her Safdie Brothers movie.
That would be awesome, bro.
Yeah.
That would be actually like oh my god. I would watch the shit out of that. Like that's actually like really, really awesome right there. Yeah.
Like Julia Fox can kind of do more.
Yeah, for real. Like, could you imagine like a whole mentor thing of like where it's like Julia Fox is like kind of mentoring her? Because I mean, Sydney Sweeney was already once upon a time in Hollywood. She already worked with Tarantino there. I also like, did you watch Big Time Adolescence real quick? Bringing it back to Pete Davidson.
That's the one where I think so.
It's the one where he's friends with the kid from high school because he dated his sister, and then he broke up with the sister, but the kid from high school still kept hanging out with him, and now like the kids in high school, like Pete Davidson fucking up his life. Yeah, Sydney Sweeney's in that and fucking breaks up with Pete Davidson and has sex with Griffin Gluck in that movie, which I just find hilarious. Just in general, that whole thing of where I'm like, okay, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Also, great for like her 5 seconds of screen time in Night Teeth, the very underrated Netflix vampire cult movie that came out last year. It was a movie basically about how all of LA is controlled by factions of vampires. There's like factions of people that fight against them. And Jorge Landenberg Jr. from Bumblebee ends up like driving around like these two vampires. So like that, like essentially it's a Collateral meets like meets like John Carpenter's Vampires. Essentially, like it's like really cool and sleek and shot exactly like that, where he's driving around like Debbie Ryan and Lucy Fry as the two vampires, and Lucy Fry is like the more psychotic one, and Debbie Ryan's like the more sympathetic one, and like she ends up like forming a bond with Jorge Landenberg Jr. and Alfie Allen, like Theon Greyjoy from Game of Thrones, is like their boss who like wants to take over all the vampires. It's a nuts movie. Like if you guys haven't watched 19 on Netflix, I would heavily recommend it. And Megan Fox and Sydney Sweeney are two of the vampire bosses, and it is. Oh, it's incredible. It is incredible, like, bad acting, if I can say that at once. Because, like, Megan Fox and Sydney Sweeney are on, like, such the same plane as far as, like, their matching energies. It's almost kind of, it's kind of, like, scary, like, as far as that goes. I would definitely recommend 19 there. Code Zero 2K. Do you think Ash had to kill that guy? I think he sold the bag heavy. I don't know if he necessarily had to kill him, but definitely it's like the guy was making it was pretty obvious that like he was like trying to get them to listen, you know.
I didn't know the cops were going to be there 5 minutes after that happened. I didn't see that coming.
Well, like the whole big thing there was it's like and like they were definitely kind of using that as a setup, but I don't think they did a very, and this is like comes into my problems with it. I don't think they did a very good job of setting that up, but like it was very clear he was sent in as like a ringer to like try and get them on camera like right there so that they could like charge in like right after, you know. Like I like
the charges that they busted in with.
Yeah, like I definitely don't know as far as like how accurate like sting operations get. That's definitely one of the ones where I'm not necessarily as sure of on that. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like I don't know, like you got any season 3 predictions as far as that goes? Like, are you like, because my whole thing is so Nate and Cassie you're gonna see is gonna be like kind of the new Nate and Maddie situation where he's just going to be abusing her every 5 seconds, but also concocting some cockamamie plan. Oh, 100%. 100%. You're going to see Rue like continuing to try and stay sober, but not. She'll probably like try to still be friends with Jules and Elliot, but there'll probably be some jealous thing, like some other thing that comes in. What's it called? The only Lexi's gonna be visiting Fezco in jail every day, and she's gonna like kind of start coming up with like some cockamamie play. Those are like the things that we can like pretty easily predict. But like, what do you think are like some other things? Like what do you think is like some new characters that could come in and like throw some shit out? Like I don't know, like pitch a storyline for season 3 that you'd want to see.
Okay, so you know Kat's friend and Maddie's friend BB, the one who's always vaping.
Yeah, the skinny chick that's kind of always with them. But yeah.
Her and maybe like Faye. I feel like both of them are gonna just have bigger roles in next season.
You think so?
Yeah, because BB's popular on social media, and Faye kind of had a good episode, so I think she's gonna be around more.
Which one's Faye again?
She was the roommate that was living in
yeah, definitely. Yeah, Faye, definitely one that impressed me. Like, I almost completely forgot about her. Like, definitely impressed me, where I thought she came in the first episode and thought she was going to be, like, a really generic character. Like, that actually surprised me, but, like, kind of, like, how kind of quick and on her feet she ended up proving in that last episode. Like, so definitely, like, I can see that. Yeah, good shit right there, predicting. Let's see. Will Fezco give his drugs to Rue? Like, well, what drugs is he going to have left is the old thing. Like, I'm pretty sure the SWAT guys raided everything there, to say the least. But
18 guns.
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't know. Final thoughts and final star ratings on the Euphoria season 2 finale?
Just the finale? I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
You give it a 4. All right. I'll go... For this episode, I'll go a 4. For the whole show, it's still like a 3.5 for me, where it's like it's too well shot for its own good, but the subject matter is ridiculous. The storylines. What about Lori? I don't remember who Lori is. That's the
older drug lady woman who used to be a teacher.
Oh yeah, her. Yeah, well, I mean that's definitely coming back. That's definitely coming back. Like what are you thinking? Like an on my block like kind of kidnapping scene, like where Rue's just walking down the street. Next thing you know, Lori's guys come out of nowhere, put the bag over her head, just throw her into the back of the van, like or
Rue's sober, it's gonna be like her mom's gonna like mortgage their house to pay Lori back. Something really dark.
What if Lori tried to take Fezco out in prison? What if she tried to do that? Try to pull like a prison style gang hit. Like, I'm telling you, man, with this show, all bets are off. Like, you literally don't know what can happen unless it's like completely predictable. Because
shots of prison in season 3, like
100%. No, without a question, we are getting shots of prison in season 3. Like, that's probably the most obvious thing that we're getting.
I cannot wait to see Hyper Pop prison. That's gonna be an adventure. It's gonna be an adventure.
It is gonna be an adventure indeed. That would be awful, but Dustin, I'm telling you, it is going to happen. So Yeah, my final thoughts on Euphoria. The show is just nuts. It is absolutely nuts. It is high caliber, watchable, enjoyable soap opera trash that is shot like a music video, and that's why everybody's into it. Like the sensibilities and teens. I'm sorry, but the minute that I saw Nate Jacobs literally turn into like a James Bond villain, I'm like, anybody who says that this show is real is true to real life is full of shit. I'm just saying that right now. But it is entertaining. It is watchable, and I understand the hype. So. Don't necessarily know how I'm feeling going into season 3, but I will definitely say this is definitely a little bit of an interesting experiment, kind of catching up on this show in the last couple of weeks, watching the first season, like kind of a little bit, and then like binging all of season 2 this past week. Like we're getting ready for the finale. But Josh, thanks for coming on to co-host with me. This is a lot of fun. I hope you'll come back. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Bacon Pizza 7 on Twitter and Mosh Landmark on Instagram. It's one
Is
of
it
those.
Mosh Landmark or is it Mosh_Landmark?
Mosh Jarkland, maybe. It could be one of those.
Mosh Markland. It might be one of those. Yeah, one of those. Follow him on everything he's got going on. He's a cool guy. He's got a future definitely in this field. And of course, thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Talking TV Podcast. We went live special on YouTube for this one because it's Euphoria and because everyone's talking about it. So if you're new to the channel, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to click the subscribe button down below. Click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put a new content. If you're tuning into us on Twitch, thank you for tuning into our next view. Be sure to keep tuned for new Twitch episodes we've got going up every single Sunday. We'll be back next week in order to do the Batman. That's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see all your guys' reactions there. Be sure to also follow us on all of our social media platforms at Official Talking TV Podcast across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the different platforms. Be sure to follow myself at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Follow Chris. He couldn't be here for this one at Christian Ivanko across all platforms. And as always, people, 12 seasons of a short film and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.